I'm going to take a look at Showdown, Legends of Wrestling. This was one of the last games developed by Acclaim. And just so you guys know, the Acclaim that exists today is in no way related to the old Acclaim. They just bought the name. Alright, getting into the game, I'm going to start with the graphics. The game uses lighting and shading effects that give everything a level of realism. However, the wrestlers don't exactly look realistic when it comes both to the character models and textures. But the arenas themselves look excellent, probably the most realistic arenas I've seen in a wrestling game. Unfortunately though, the audience is far from impressive. I mean, some problems with the audience is the people in the front row are 3D, but they look terrible. They're very blocky and don't even use textures. They even have choppy animations. The 2D people in the crowd look average at best, but the people are always looking at the screen, even the people at the bottom of the screen. Perhaps they should have made some 2D sprites of people from behind, so it looks like they're actually watching the match. The game also has some frame rate issues. It isn't too big of a problem, but you'll notice as you play the frame rate seems a little jumpy, and the game even gets laggy when there's 4 characters on the screen at once. So the graphics are okay in this game, but the lack of detail really hurts it. When it comes to the animations in this game, I'd say they're pretty stiff. Some of them are animated pretty well, but others look like they didn't even try. And this game doesn't have the largest array of moves. However, a lot of the wrestlers in this game didn't really go outside of the realm of suplexes and body slams. And a lot of wrestlers in this game do moves they never did in real life, but I'm okay with that, because if they gave the wrestlers only the moves they did in real life, they'd only have about 4. And also, it's pretty entertaining to see Andre the Giant throw a front flip off a 20-foot cage. Getting into the gameplay, I imagine this is what hell is like. The control layout is okay, but the game itself is amazingly unresponsive, the hit detection is terrible, and the game just feels erratic. So this is pretty much the control layout. Triangle and circle are grapple buttons, X is attack, square is block, L1 is to climb the ropes and leave the ring, R1 is to run, L2 is to change who you're looking at, and R2 is to pick up weapons. Simple enough. So the button layout isn't a problem at all. It's the stiffness of the control, the slow speed of the game, and the gaming mechanics that really just make this a piece of shit. It's also difficult to keep an enemy down. You have to knock them down like 20 times before they stay down. And to make an opponent stay down, you really have to drain their energy, and that takes a long beating to do. So before you can start doing aerial maneuvers, or even go for weapons, you really have to give them a beating. Now when it comes to games like WrestleMania 21 for the Xbox and WCW Nitro for the PlayStation, the developers were well aware the game engines are extremely boring. With that said, you can win a match in those games in like 2 minutes, but in this game, these matches go on for fucking ever. For example, another wrestling game developed by Acclaim was WWF Attitude, and you could finish a match in that game really fast, which was good because it gets boring really fast. But in this game, even if you stay on your enemy, constantly slamming him or hitting him with weapons, these matches just go on forever and ever. And if it's a tag match, it's gonna be even way fucking longer. And getting into some of the shitty gaming mechanics, let me get into the weapons. You can get weapons from under the ring in this game, and some of those weapons include a chair, a crutch, guitar, cooking sheet, etc. But all you can do with the weapons is smack your opponent and throw it at them. And for some reason they decided to make weapons just as strong as regular attacks, so using them is pretty pointless. For some reason I was looking forward to playing the table and the ladder matches in this game. And unfortunately I was very disappointed. I thought WrestleMania 21 made the table and ladder match boring, but this game reigned supreme in that department. When it comes to interaction with the table, all you can do is smack your opponent with it, throw it, and put your opponent on it. And when it comes to the ladder, all you can do is smack your opponent with it, throw it at your opponent, and set it up so you can climb. Of course you can jump off the ladder, but for some reason this game makes that extremely boring. So not much was done with these weapons, but at least they add a little more dynamic to the game. And what really sucks about those weapons is you can only use a table during a table match and a ladder during a ladder match, so that means you can't have a hardcore match and pull those weapons out. A fun thing to do in wrestling games is to put an opponent on a table and set up a ladder and jump off the ladder. Unfortunately though, these two weapons never see each other in the same match. And another problem with the ladder matches is you can't set up a ladder in the ring, climb the ladder, and jump out of the ring. For some reason this game eliminates everything fun to do. And getting into some bad physics, throwing weapons, and most notably large weapons like tables and ladders. The wrestlers are capable of throwing these weapons like a ball of paper. To throw weapons so far and fast, you'd have to be the Incredible Hulk or on the friggin' moon. And once again, it's hilarious to see the wrestlers do this, but the lack of realism is just baffling. This game also has a cage that looks like it's about 20 feet tall. But falling down from the top is really lame because the game does nothing to emphasize the impact of falling from such a high level. So that pretty much covers the unique matches in this game. The only other things are single match, tag, and battle royal. And by the way, when it comes to table, ladder, and cage match, those can only be done one-on-one, which is also lame. The story mode in this game is called Showdown Challenge. There isn't too much to it, you just sort of keep fighting opponents. I can barely get myself into it though because the gameplay is just beyond terrible. So when it comes to the audio in this game, where do I start? Well, Jimmy Hart did the music for the wrestlers, as he did in WWF and WCW. Obviously, they couldn't use the licensed music, but they did a great job recreating the original songs. Entrance themes for Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, DDP, and others are very reminiscent to their licensed songs. But not all the songs are great. For example, Eddie Guerrero has that cliche fiesta music, and it's not even fitting for his character. And the play-by-play in this game is just terrible. It's Tony Schiavone, Larry Zbyszko, and Bobby Heenan. They were terrible on Nitro, and they're terrible in this game. What a coincidence. They repeat the same crap over and over. They sound awful, and they talk too damn much. Fortunately, you can disable them. And apparently, Bobby Heenan has throat cancer, so he just sounds terrible. It's actually pretty sad to listen to him. You'll also notice Tony and Larry don't really acknowledge him or even interact with him. Bobby Heenan really just chimes in with dumb comments. Let me go ahead and play you something.
He won't be able to hold him.
Could you make that out? Let me go ahead and play that again.
He won't be able to hold him.
And pretty much everything he says will be something like that. For example, Tony Schiavone will be saying how great the Ultimate Warrior is, and then Bobby Heenan will just chime in. But it used to throw toy horrors back in the day. And don't get me wrong, I used to love Bobby Heenan, but you just don't get him to do commentary when his voice sounds like that. It's the same reason Christopher Reeves didn't play Superman after falling off a horse. The creator wrestler system in this game is pretty crappy at best. You have a pretty decent list of moves to choose from. It even has moves you haven't seen in other wrestling games, but some are so poorly animated you just won't even want to use them. And when it comes to editing your wrestler aesthetically, it has a lot of the same problems we saw in WWF Attitude. For starters, your created wrestlers don't look nearly as good as the default wrestlers in this game. The hair you can choose for your created wrestlers don't look nearly as realistic as the hair you'll see on default wrestlers. I mean, the hair on the Ultimate Warrior here actually moves around and it has detail. Yet the hair you can pick for your created wrestler is just a big mound of shit. It doesn't move around, it doesn't look real, and you can't even pick realistic colors for it. The only colors you can choose for it are the colors of the fucking rainbow. I mean, black and brown are the most common hair colors in the world, and for whatever reason, I can't choose them. And when it comes to the wrestling attire you can choose from, it's all pretty boring, and you're just going to end up creating a wrestler you don't even like looking at. And by the way, you can't even change the color of the wrestling attire. You can only change the color of the hair and facial hair. So really, the only charm of this game is that it has legends. And when you get your hands on this game, you'll instantly realize these guys are big names with little ability. And also, unless you're like 40 years old or really follow wrestling history, you're just not going to know the guys in this game. And apparently, if you've been on WWF or WCW television for 5 minutes, you are considered a legend. And here's a crazy idea. Instead of assembling such a large cast of people we never gave a shit about, I would have liked to seen some Japanese legends in this game, like the Great Muta, Hayabusa, the Great Suzuki. That would have been much better, and a lot of us are more familiar with them anyway. So I could go on and on, but let me wrap this up. This game is terrible. It plays similarly to WWF Attitude with an easy-to-use grappling system, but even with that said, and sadly, I actually prefer WWF Attitude. This is such a slow, boring, and crippled game, there's no fun to be had. Now, I wasn't expecting this to be a great wrestling game, but at the least I was hoping it would be somewhat enjoyable. But this game fails at that. This game gets an F, it's fucking dreadful, and the only wrestling game worse than this is another game in the series. Some of you guys I'm sure are going to disagree, but I honestly don't give a shit. This is one of the worst wrestling games I've ever played.